So good for other forms of research, we have experiments. So for experiments, I'm just going to read and conclude on them. For experiment, I wrote experiment is a research method using an experimental research design. So it's about experiment. And when we talk about experiments, basically scientific approach, which means we're talking about positivist.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay. Yes. So what does the scientific approach of experiment implies? It means that it's using the scientific method and seek to establish a cause-effect relationship between two variables. So that means it's about the cost effect of two variables, like variable 1 and variable 2, finding one, making one constant while the other remains moving. So as soon as, because this one is constant, so this variable is constant, the other one is what we are working on. So whatever happens is as a result of this one that is there, that is not constant. You don't get it. You know, when we talk about two variables, why these things happen. So if this thing has happened as a result of that, there's a correlation between them. So for us to be able to know which one is affected, if we have two variables, like boiling water and heating 30 degrees, as you have to boil the water before it reaches that degrees, yes or no?
Yeah.
So boiling is a variable. The degree at which it's going to reach is another variable. So at that point in time, that we need to know which one is causing that to happen. So we talk about boiling. Boiling remains constant. The degree at which you want to reach continues to be on constant. That is not constant. So boiling will happen because we have reached 30 degrees. Or 30 degrees will happen because there is boiling. So these are the cause of effect. So for scientific approach, they use the lab, they use experiments to know the causes of a situation in terms of why is this thing happening? Why are these things happening? So as soon as that thing has happened, there would have been a reason for it to happen. Mm-hmm. There would have been some actions that made it to happen. So these actions that made it to happen, we see them as variables. So if there are two, one remains constant, then the other will be the cause effect. This one remains constant, this one becomes the cause effect. So that means two variables will not have an impact at the same time. One must remain constant. For you to understand why it happened, this one must be constant, and this one will be the reason why it happened. If this one is constant, this is the reason why it happened. So boiling and water reaching that 30 degrees. So the boiling point, there's a boiling point, which has come as a result of boiling. So that is a variable. What has happened is another variable. So for that to happen, for the water to heat at 30 degrees, boiling must occur. So here we're saying boiling is happening. Then let's forget about the cause now. So there's always correlation between the two variables. That's about experiments, and it's a scientific approach.
Yes.
Do you get it now or not?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is usually a positivist method of producing quantitative data. Experiments involve manipulating one independent variable and creating change in a dependent variable, provided that one factor can be held constant. So we have to manipulate one for the other to remain constant. But you get it? We have to change one variable for the other before we can get the cause effect. So two variables will not work at the same time. If two variables work at the same time, then we're not going to get any cause effect. Mm-hmm. We want to know causes. We want to know why it happens, right? So how do we know why it happened? We have to make one factor variable. Then the focus is on the other one. That is causes and effects. So this thing has happened because this has made it to happen, or because this is not working with it. That's why it's happening. That's the scientific approach.
Yes.
So changes in the dependent variable can be said to be the cause by the change to the independent variable. So the one that is remaining constant is independent, and the one that we're using, we have the dependent variable and the independent variable. The dependent variable needs to work with the independent variable. So if the independent variable is there, then it means that the dependent variable cannot do anything without the independent variable. And if we have the independent variable, we need the dependent variable to work with it to give us a cause of the result. So that means like the water and the boiling point. Water is there, is independent. It could stay all alone, but water cannot get to 30 degrees without boiling.
That's dependent.
Do you understand? So there won't be boiling point without water being heated by fire.
Yes.
So that is the point about causes and effects. So there's causation based on the dependent variable and the independent variable. So one variable will be dependent, the other one will be independent.
Yes.
Is it clear?
Yes.
So this takes us to laboratory experiments. Laboratory experiments are deeply flawed. Laboratory experiments are deeply flawed in sociology from the sociologist's point of view. Why? Because people live in the societies, not in the laboratory. So for laboratory experiments, sociologists do not believe in it because they feel like people don't stay in the lab. You can't just take people to the laboratory and tell them and watch them do things, watch them make things happen. People don't live there. They live in the natural environment. They live in a natural setting.
Yeah.
So taking them to the lab for experiment might bring about autumn effect or observer effect. But they would not behave their normal self because they know you are taking them to the lab for a reason. Mm-hmm. So if you have taken them to the lab, they know they are being studied. So you won't expect them to have their natural behavior. They can only have their natural behavior if they're in the natural settings, like in the field.
Yes.
Do you get the flaw now about laboratory experiments? So laboratory experiment occurs when the respondents are taken to the lab to be observed. But the problem about laboratory experiments is that there's autumn effect or observer's effect, where the participants would have to change their behavior based on the fact that they know they are being studied. That is the point about laboratory effect, laboratory experiments. It's clear.
Yeah.
So therefore, sociologists use field experiments as this occurs in the natural setting. So it is better we use field experiments because in the field, it is a natural setting.
Yes.
Do you understand? But what are the benefits of what's the benefit of using the field experiments? The benefit is that you can get inside the group. It's in the field. You can get inside the group. You can be part of the group.
Yeah.
So I said it is an effective way of getting inside the group behavior. You can understand what makes them to do what they do, and you can be part of that behavior. But the problem about using field experiments is that one, there are ethical problems. Like, will they know? This is the question. The ethical question is, are they going to know that they are being observed or not? Because it is unethical to lie to participants. So are you going to tell them that they are being observed, or you're not going to tell them? Because it's a natural setting. And for you to be able to get the kind of behavior you need or the kind of response you need from them, they have to be in their natural self. And how is it going to be possible? Do you have to inform them or not involve them? Do you have to manipulate them or not? That's a question that is ethical.
You involve them, they know, so they will change.
They will change their attitude. And that's the problem about laboratory experiment already.
Yeah.
Here in laboratory experiment, you don't even have to tell them. You've taken them to the lab.
Yes, I don't know.
It's already known. It's already defined.
Yeah.
So that's the first ethical problem. The second one, people may become angry. People may become angry if they know that they are being, people may become angry about strange and new situations. It's in the field. Whatever is happening there, you might need a record, a camcorder, or you need a record, or whatever you would need. The settings is not always going to be the same settings that they are used to. Like, something strange is happening around there. You would know that something strange is happening. You might not be able to ask, but you would know that things are not just this way before now. So people might get angry about that. Like, why are these people here? Why are they placing camera there? So it is not the natural settings. So that means no matter how it is, like, the natural setting will change because something has to happen, or something must be gotten. Information needs to be gotten. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be that natural environment that it's going to be like. You have to record. So people seeing you, even writing. Is this guy writing? This is not a place to write. Why is he writing? What is he writing? So people get curious about that. Is it clear?
Yes.
The third one, researchers can lose a degree of control as soon as the event starts. So the point here is that, it's a field event. It's a field research. You might not be able to hold the grip of what happens anymore. Everybody is moving. You need to get information. But how long are you going to be able to catch up with everybody?
Yes.
So as soon as you start, when you have not started making your records or research, it might be easy. But when you start, because you have to meet up with time and movement of people. So because they're not going to stay, they're not going to be there like statue. So they move, they do things, and they're not going to do it at your own pace. They do it at their own pace. So that means you might not be able to catch up with the information you need to gather. That's another problem about field research.
Yes.
Field experiments. Is it clear?
Yeah.
That's all I wrote about it anyway. So we'll go to, there's a case study there, but we don't need it for laboratory experiments. So we'll go to case study now. That's another form of research. So for case studies, I wrote a case study is a detailed, in-depth study of one group or event. So for case study, that means you need to go in deep about the world, what has been written about an individual or about an occurrence or something that has happened, an event. So that is what a case study is.
Yes.
Like what we saw here is a case study. So case study, this can involve many methods or combination of methods, either quantitative or qualitative. It depends on you. But it's a case study. So the story is there, the note is there. So it depends on the kind of information you need to gather, if it is qualitative or quantitative. So what are the strengths about case study? One, case studies allow different aspects of the case being studied to be explored using appropriate methods. As soon as you get the case study, it depends on you to look at the kind of method you want to use and what do you want to find out. Are you thinking about qualitative or quantitative? If it is quantitative, you get it with the case study because you will see different times these events occurred. And if it is qualitative, you get it based on the opinions said about each participant.
So with case study, you can achieve what you want.
Yes, you can use different methods that is appropriate to what you want to achieve. So it depends on what you are looking out for. Right? So it's a case study. So everything is set. So now you just have to pinpoint what you need to know.
Yes.
And what kind of method would make you to get what you need to know. That's about case study. That's an advantage to you. Yes or no? Because you are not restricted to one method. So it depends on what you are looking out for. The second point. Case study can provide a deep and detailed account of the case. It's a case study. So it will be in details. So you might not need to even make research for that. Do you understand the point?
Yes.
It's a case study. Everything you need to know is already there. You just have to figure it out. That's the point there. You just have to figure out what is needed.
Yes.
The third point, it may allow a wider conclusion to be drawn because it's a case study. You'll be able to come up with different conclusions, different summary. Oh, when this happened to that, well, this was the reason why this happened. Then this happened again. That should be the reason why it happened. You would know because each case study has its own paragraph. You will be able to conclude for each paragraph, which means you can have a wider range of conclusion. If you study it well. Do you understand? So you need your expertise to understand the case study itself. So I won't give different meanings to different things. Clear?
Yes.
So what are the problems about case studies? One, the findings cannot be generalized as it can only apply to the case. Each case is different. You cannot generalize. That's the problem about case study. The case is for certain events. The case is for certain individual. So how do you generalize it? You can't. So what happens to you might not happen to me. What happened in event A might not even happen in event B, of the same kind of event.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in your sport day will not happen in the sport day of another school. So that means you cannot generalize. That's the first problem.
Yes.
So it's more like you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Did you get it? Number two, the findings cannot be replicated. You cannot replicate it. You can't, because it's basically on what your thoughts at that point in time. So the next situation you're going to be might not come up with the same situation you were the last time you checked the case study.
Yes.
So you can't replicate it. The third point, it's a case study. That means you have to be deeply involved. Yes or no? And as soon as you are deeply involved in it, you might be influenced by your own feelings. Oh, this happens. Oh, now you having feeling for that individual. You feel emotional for that individual. Then you might be influenced to give analysis based on how you become emotionally attached
So it's going
to that.
invalid.
Yeah, it becomes invalid because you become subjective.
Yes.
Do you understand? So why are you subjective here? You are subjective because you have to get involved in it. But getting involved in it, you should do it neutrally. But if you catch up with an emotion with it or feelings with it, your research might become invalid because it lacks objectivity. Is it clear?
Yes.
So that's about case studies and experiments.